What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Silence to Shame podcast. So, okay, y'all know that I started hosting the podcast like in 2017 with our colleague and Silence to Shame volunteer, Free the Vision. But now my girl Life is the main host, but I'm guest hosting today. So you got your girl Shanti Das here, the CEO and founder of Silence to Shame. And shout out to our girl Life, who does such a wonderful job on a regular basis. But I'm super excited to be here today, because this guest that we're going to be talking to today is so powerful. She's done so much in the community, and she recently reached out wanting to partner with Silence to Shame, and I think we both have been fans of each other's work for quite some time. So today's show, we're going to be talking about healing the spaces between us, breaking the cycle in Black men's mental health, which is such an important conversation. And so I want us to give a warm Silence to Shame welcome to Tasnim Sulaiman. We are so grateful to have you, and I just want to read a little bit about your impressive background. Taz is an LPC, founder and CEO of Black Men Heal. She also is a licensed psychotherapist who owns a private practice in Philadelphia. And shout out to the Eagles. Congratulations to your Eagles on winning the Super Bowl. Tasnim, warmly known as Taz, is on a mission to dismantle broken systems that uphold the lack of equity and access to quality health care for communities of color. So Taz, again, thank you for being here. I'm just so impressed with what you've been able to do with Black Men Heal. Wonderful story, wonderful journey, right? Kudos to you for answering the call, for answering God's call and assignment over your life. Taz, did you find that growing up, you saw some of the Black men in your own family and friend group, suffer in silence or kind of deal with some of those common cliches of, maybe not opening up or getting help because it is a sign of weakness and that sort of thing? Or was it just really when you started practicing? But did you kind of notice some of that stuff growing up as well?
I had a lot of guards up, and I realized that some of that came from in my relationship with my father. And so, yeah, I mean, the relationship stuff is really, really powerful, like the intergenerational, how we repeat patterns and repeat dynamics, because it's unconscious. So we don't know that we're repeating it until we're like, oh, wait, there's some themes here when you start looking at your relationship history. So it started there. And I had definitely seen and experienced at the time when I first was doing my training to become a couples therapist. I was married at that time. I'm not anymore, but I was married at that time. And I had also just had a baby. So I got married. Actually, my father passed away. I got married and I had a baby all within 2 months of each other.
Oh, wow.
It was a really, like a really emotionally trying time. It was in 2010. So my father died in November. I got married December 3rd, and then I had my baby December 28th. So I didn't have a lot of time myself to process. Those are 3 major life happenings for somebody at one time. I didn't really have a lot of time to process those different emotional experiences. And what took up all the space, obviously, was my daughter, my baby, because you have a new baby, they take up all the space. And I started this postgraduate program for couples and family therapy within that next year. And while I was in that program, that's when a lot of my grief and a lot of my processing from my father's passing started happening around that space and time. And it was also coinciding with around the time when I started seeing couples. So I started to understand a lot more about the family structure and the family systems and the impact all of that had on me in my life. And then because I was married, I was also understanding, I know he was sick of me, child, coming home all the time, reading all the stuff, everything I was learning, I'm coming home and like, okay.
Trying to apply it, right?
Trying to apply it. He's like, I ain't signed up for that. But I was learning so much and realizing, wow, like this stuff is really powerful, because we don't realize how much the things that we've been through affects every aspect of our lives, and the way in which we show up in relationship, the way in which we show up in business and in work. So it's everything that we go through in our childhoods, and the traumas we experience is so interconnected. And so all of those things, being a therapist has helped me like work out my mental health more than anything else,
Mm-hmm.
as well as doing my own therapy, of course.
I love that. Really, really, everything that you said kind of struck a nerve with me. And so my dad took his own life when I was 7 months old. And so
Oh,
I didn't have that situation, but I watched, other family members kind of deal with my dad's suicide. And I think that caused like strained relationships too with me and how I dealt with men just in general. But you talked about something that I think is super important, and it really ties into nicely into what we're doing at Silence to Shame. So you talked about intergenerational, right? Dialogue and connections and how that affects how we handle one another, how we deal with one another. So Silence to Shame, we recently launched a new campaign or PSA, and it's entitled, again, as I mentioned earlier, Healing the Spaces Between Us, a transformative campaign dedicated to empowering Black males, raising awareness around mental health, and the life-saving 988 suicide and crisis lifeline. And what I loved about this PSA, and shout out to Megan Shore Pringle on our team who worked with a company called Oak Films to curate and produce it. It shows the grandfather, the father, and the son, and
mm.
how they all were kind of like struggling with talking to one another. And then finally, I want to say, I think it was the son who was like, yo, we need to talk about this. Like, we can't, continue like this. And it's so true. It's like once you open up that dialogue, it can be life changing and life saving for
Mm-hmm.
different generations, right, within the family. And I sent the PSA to several of my male friends, and they were blown away, and they were like, man, I love this. And I wish I could have been able to open up more and talk to my father and so forth. And so, why do you think a campaign like this is vital to intergenerational dialogue of Black men and their journey of healing and even just growing into manhood?
So crucial. Shout out to your team for this campaign. I love it. We
Thank
definitely want to
you.
work with you guys on it, and highlight it, amplify it as much as possible. But intergenerational trauma, as I said, is really so crucial for Black men's healing, because it really helps unpack like the historical, well, even before we get to familial, like the stuff we go through in our families,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
We have already been through trauma. You know what I mean? We're born into trauma from, if you think about unpacking historical systems of burdens that slavery, segregation, mass incarceration, racial discrimination. So we're born into all of that, like even before we even get to who our mom and dad is and
That's
where we
right.
grew up. You know what I'm saying? So it's in our nervous system. It's
Mm-hmm.
from our ancestors. We are actually carrying our ancestral trauma as well. But unpacking that really helps unpack the burdens that impact us mentally, emotionally, physically, and the things that help that we don't even always recognize cause us stress, distrust, emotional suppression,
Mm-hmm.
health, and even health issues. It's all connected. And I think aware the dialogue is important, because sometimes we really just don't know, because a lot of these things haven't been talked about.
That's
And
right.
it's the other thing intergenerationally, we're really just kind of getting into the generations where mental health is thank God, finally, I think the stigma is starting to decrease because
Mm-hmm.
of the type of work that I'm doing, that you're doing, that people are doing, and the way that people are more transparent with it. We're starting to kill the stigma with it. So like our kids generation, my kids, my daughter and them, they talk about it. You got to hear the way the kids like it's
Right.
different, right?
Right.
But each generation is, I think, helping, which is a great thing, helping to kill the stigma of it. And talking about things helps with the awareness and understanding,
Mm-hmm.
like being able to recognize the root causes of struggles,
Mm-hmm.
like the family patterns of pain, and resilience. Like knowing those things help us make sense of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then also it teaches us like how to express ourselves emotionally. So like when there's safe spaces to dialogue, that can actually break the cycle of silence and suppression, which is why a lot of people are suffering and struggling. And then I also think it gives us this opportunity, which is really important in our community, I think, for collective healing.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that we are struggling. You know what I mean? We're all doing
Yeah.
the very best that we can. And the collective healing lets us know that we're not alone. I think it strengthens us for community bonds. Shared experience and mutual support is so important,
Mm-hmm.
especially for Black men. In my research of Building Black Men Hill, I found that Black men are actually more likely to be impacted and influenced by other men within their same age category.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if they are, and so one of our concepts, we give them free therapy, is we ask men to go back out into their communities and dialogue and to be transparent about their experiences, because just that alone actually helps to kill the stigma,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps people to know that they're not alone. And
Mm.
so for men, I remember when I was married, I overhear my ex-husband sometimes talking to his friends. They would talk about sports, and they would talk about boxing, they would talk about cars. Um, and he would be struggling with a lot of different things. And I became close friends with a friend of his, right? And my ex-husband's aunt had passed, and I know that she was really like a mother to him. He was really struggling with that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking to me about it a little bit because he didn't share that much.
Yeah.
But his friend had also lost his sister. And I was like, and I remember texting his friend, like, yo, like, have you talked to him? He's like, no, I didn't know. And I'm like, why aren't you guys talking about that? Because
Mm-hmm.
even when you're talking about this, like the dialogue is going to help you each discover something.
That's
It's
right.
like I always use this analogy of like listening, why we love music so much, because music resonates. You can hear a bar and somebody can capture something you've experienced, but you may not have been able to name it or frame it like that. Sometimes when you hear something named and framed and you like, that's it. That is exactly what it's like. Sometimes we're just feeling it and
Mm-hmm.
struggling, not able to name it. And one of the things that I've learned as a clinician of working with men, and that is really important, is teaching them the process of naming, because the process of even able to name and make sense of what you're experiencing, even that eases up some of the distress
Mm.
of it in your nervous system, because you have to make sense of it. I've had clients, male clients. I remember this story where a male client I had, he came in and he was struggling a lot, and he's like, there's something wrong with me. I'm not myself. I'm not myself. And I'm spending all my time by myself. I don't want to, spend time with my kids. Basically, he wasn't getting any type of joy. Like, he was just isolating. He's like, I'm not interested in sex anymore. I think,
Wow.
my girl think I'm cheating on her. I'm not interested in sex. I just haven't had the energy for anything. So he's describing all these things, right? He's naming to me what his presenting things. And I'm listening as a clinician, and I'm like, oh, and he was like, and I'm not suicidal. I mean, I would never do that. He was like, but if I was to, get hit by a truck or something today, I wouldn't be mad.
Wow.
And as he was naming it, I remember naming for him. I'm like, that's depression. What
Mm-hmm.
you're naming is depression. And I'll never forget. He's like, depression? This years ago. He's like, depression. He's like, that before. He like, I never thought a nigga like me could have something like that.
Wow.
I just remember being like, I'm like, yeah, and it's actually very common.
Mm-hmm.
80% of people at some point in their lives will experience depression, right? And I'm like, but the good thing about it is, even though 80% of people will experience it, it's really, really treatable if you have the awareness. Like, because I was able to name and frame that for him, he was like, it actually gave him more hope, because I'm like, listen, here's the plan. This is what we're going to do. This is how we treat that.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave him hope, to the point where he came back in the next session and was like, I've been thinking about this depression thing. And he's like, I think a couple of my other homies might have this too. And I just
Wow.
like, but them having that space where they could organize the thoughts.
And the language that you gave him,
The
right?
language, yes, just the language of being able to name it. And
Yeah.
so dialogue is just so important because for so many people, it's going to be the introduction for them being something to tap, to resonate and being like, that's it. Because now you can start unpacking things. You got to be aware of it to unpack it.
Right. Thank you for that. And so as a clinician, right? So what would you say to a young, boy who wants to have a conversation with his dad and is struggling? Like, how would you have him approach it? Or even a man who's struggling with his dad, right? Who might be kind of, maybe in his 60s, 70s, and just still have a lot of stigma around mental health.
I think it first starts with, because first you have to be able to name it for yourself. And that's why I think therapy is so important, doing your own work, because being able to name what you're experiencing, connect where it comes from, because like the first part is the process of naming, and then being able to connect like, oh, okay, when did you first experience that? Oh, this is connected to that. There's a theme here. And to be able to connect to your responses, the behavioral piece of it. Oh, okay, because when this happens, like I tend to do this, and this behavior that I'm exhibiting is causing more distress in this way, right? I think that's first, is being able to name it before you can go dialogue with somebody else about something that could be challenging. It's hard to do that if you're not able to do it. You're not able to do it for yourself. But then I think it also depends, because in that scenario that you named, depending on who you're talking to. So like I'm representing this shirt right
I
now.
love it.
Vulnerability is the new sexy,
Oh, is that
right?
on your is that for sale on your site?
Yes, this is. People can go to our website and purchase, and all the proceeds go to free mental health care.
Okay.
But I'm bringing that up because I believe that vulnerability is, I don't know why it gets this peg for weakness, because it's hard. I'm a therapist, and that's something that I work through all the time, is trying to be more vulnerable in my relationships, right? But vulnerability is something that I do also think is earned. So when you go to have conversations, it's the really hard conversations. Sometimes people can harm themselves more because you'll go look for healing in another person and they can't give it to you. And you know why they can't give it to you? Because they haven't done that
I was gonna
work.
say, because they ain't healed, right?
Because they haven't done that work. And so you got to be careful when, sometimes we want other people to help heal that wound. But if they haven't started the process to heal the wound, then you got to go heal the wound. And then sometimes we got to go talk to our parents, because again, we're a generation that is doing a little bit better than maybe our parents' generation with doing some of that work, right? So oftentimes we're in positions where we're going back to talk to our parents about things or want to make sense of things, but we might have to guide and help their process if they haven't done that work. So be careful if you are doing work on yourself. Be careful of knowing who can who can safely receive your vulnerability, because I think that's what scares people away. If you're vulnerable with somebody who hasn't done that work and they respond in a way that doesn't make you feel safe, seen, heard, loved, accepted, all of those things, it could be more damaging.
Guard that vulnerability. I love that. That's great. I gotta pass that on to my own family and friends. All right, so we only have time for a few more questions, but I do want to give our listeners and Silence the Shame followers an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the great work that you're doing at Black Men Heal. Can you talk to us about the King's Corner program, and any other like initiatives? I know you go and do programming in a lot of states, so the tour that you guys have been doing. So just tell us a little bit more about that and how we can get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, in addition to offering, we offer 8 free therapy sessions. That's our main flagship program that we started, to men age 18 and up. And we operate in 13 states. We're not in every state yet for individual therapy, but if you go to our website, You can see the states that we service. PA, New York, and Georgia are our three biggest markets where we have, when I say biggest markets, meaning we have the most resource to be able to pair the men there. And we have a really amazing, innovative system that really matches clients up to providers based off of relational things. Like we use variables to try to indicate whether or not the client and the therapist will have a positive relationship, because that is ultimately the biggest indicator of successful therapeutic outcomes. So we have that, and you can go to our website and apply. And that's the only way. We don't take phone calls. We don't take emails about getting therapy, and we only accept applications from the men who are applying. So you can't apply on the behalf of someone else. So let me just put that out there too.
You cannot.
Yes, you cannot apply on the behalf
Okay,
of
that's good to
someone else.
know.
This is a program that is geared towards men who are ready to commit to their process. And we all know so many people who were like, oh, I just wish that they would just go get some therapy. We all know them, especially my ladies, right? But we can't do that for other people. And it actually doesn't work at all, because if somebody is not going to commit to, if they're not ready to commit in that process of change, it's just not going to be effective. So if they're not ready to commit to that, they could come to King's Corner. And King's Corner is a virtual group for men every Sunday night at 7 p.m.
Oh, it's
free.
every week.
It's every week, every Sunday. It's been a constant for 5 years, every week. Unless there's like a holiday or something. Yes. And there's men all over the country that come on this call. And every week there's a topic that's applicable to men's mental health. And so it's really actually really powerful and amazing. We have over 3,000 men registered for the group.
Get out of here. That's so great. I have a few people I'm going to recommend for that. That's wonderful.
Oh, yes. I think it's
like a support group.
Such a powerful space. Say that again.
It's like a support group.
Yes, it's like a support group, but like a peer support group. And we have the hosts are often therapists or people who can speak to that subject. Like for example, like when Chadwick Boseman passed away, the men wanted to know more about colon cancer. So we went and got a doctor to go tell them more about colon cancer. So there's always, and we get a lot of those topics from the men in the space. They actually tell us what they want, and then we go and we make sure that they have it.
Is it men only?
That space is men only, but we do have a group for women as well called Hill. So people could register for King's Corner, the men's support group, on our website. You can also register for Hill with Him.
And what time is it every week?
The men's support group is Sundays at 7, and Hill with Him is bi-weekly, Saturdays at 11.
And is that that's East Coast time, right?
Yes, East Coast time.
Okay.
And once you register, what I love about the groups is everybody does not always have the time and the space or readiness to commit to individual therapy, which it is a lot. You got to be ready for an in-depth process. But with the groups, you can come and go. You don't have to commit. If you register, you'll get a link and see the topic every week. If you feel like that topic, oh, that's something I want to hear about, come on. And if you don't, then don't. You don't have to come off camera. You can, you can just listen, or you can share. So it's, I love that space for them. And so people can sign up for all of those services, and they're all free, which is most important to keep stressing, because all of our services at Black Men Hill are free, because that is one of the biggest barriers that we've removed. And by removing that, the hope is that it actually can motivate somebody. Hey, now there's no cost to be able to just go stick my foot in the water.
That's right. Can you send us a flyer on that too? We want to promote that as well for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely will.
I'll send that. That's so dope. I'm just so in awe of all that y'all are doing, and I'm so grateful that we are connected. Thank you.
Thank you,
my sister friend, for reaching out. I think partnership is so important. We talked about this not too long ago about us supporting one another, especially in the climate of our nation and the world right now. It really is about partnership. It's about collective healing, collective resources, and just us working together as one unit. And so, again, I want to thank you. I honor you. I honor the work that you've done, all of your clinicians. You have a beautiful spirit and a beautiful soul. And I can tell that you're just really genuine in your love and care of really being out there to heal these men. And so the world is a better place for you being in it and for Black Men Heal being in our community, really doing the work. Doing the
Thank you.
work too when it's hard, right? People, you know, we talked
Yes.
about it also in the pandemic, money was there and now the money is not what it used to be. So y'all got to support organizations and donate to Black Men Heal, donate to Silence the Shame, because we are out here in the trenches doing the good work even when the money's dried up, right? We're not stopping this important work and this mission. So just thank you again, Taz, for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the space that you've created, everything you've done for our culture. You mean a lot to me, and I support to many people in what you're doing. And I really look forward to doing more work with Silence the Shame this year.
Well, we look forward to it too. And I just want to remind everybody, if you like what you're hearing, please click the like button and subscribe to our Silence the Shame podcast. You can check us out on YouTube or the audio version of it on all. Follow us on all podcast platforms, and please share it with your community, with your family, with your circles of trust, if you will. And I just want to end again on our powerful campaign that we have going right now, which is Empowering Black Males campaign. And it's healing the spaces between us. This transformative campaign to empower Black males, raising awareness around mental health, and the life-saving 988 suicide and crisis lifeline. If you need help, y'all, call 988, just like you call 911 if you're in an unfortunate emergency. If you are in a mental health crisis, you don't have the funding to get to therapy, and you need that support, call 988, and then make sure you sign up for King's Corner, which is every Sunday, a virtual collective healing space for men only at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can sign up for that on the Black Men Heal website. And of course, you can visit us at silencetheshame.com. Again, I want to thank my guest today, the incredible Tasnim Sulaiman.
Thank you.
If I'm saying that correctly. Yes, CEO and founder of Black Men Heal. And I am your host, Shanti Da. Shout out to our other host who normally is here, Life. And we'll see you soon, Life. And as always, y'all, as we say here, I want y'all to take time, save a life, and silence the shame.